We'll call the meeting to order at 6:04. First, I will read the Zoom technology, or the meeting is going to be recorded and will be posted to YouTube and other social media platforms. By participating in this meeting, you understand that the recording could contain your video stream or your audio stream, including images of yourself or anyone in the room with you. If you choose to enable your video or audio device during the meeting, as well as anything or anyone else that may be in the background, could be recorded. The recording could include any opinions you contribute and anything you say about yourself. On occasion, chat within the meeting could also be captured in the meeting recording. Therefore, anyone attending the recorded meeting may have aspects of their personal data recorded if they actively participate or not. We'll take attendance, first of all. Peggy Thompson.
Here.
Walter Nutter. Deb Chamberlain.
Here.
Myself. And tonight we also have the chair sitting in, Mark Brophy. First item on the agenda would be the approval of the minutes of the Budget Subcommittee meeting on Monday, January 8th, which really focused on a discussion of rural aid and its expenditure and how we're going to utilize our resources. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? None opposed? We're all set. Before we actually start, I'm sure that this is our second meeting of the year, our first meeting really to talk about the budget for fiscal year 24/25. We will, I'm sure that some opening remarks will be made by the superintendent, and then we will turn it over to Cheryl Duvall, who is participating in her last year as the fiscal coordinator here. Very good.
So I'm happy to kick it off. I just want to say that we have collaborated with our administrative teams, both at the district level and the building-based level teams as well, to make decisions that we're presenting to you tonight. Also, on top of that, we did do some, and I think you'll see patterns and trends that we've been speaking about. So when we look at our enrollment numbers, when we look at the needs of the students, we're trying to make decisions that are in line with our current needs. And this is a little different than I think we've done it in the past. I think Cheryl's going to, you'll see a couple reductions tonight that normally we may not put forward. Is that right, Cheryl? Yeah. So thanks for coming and spending the time with us.
Want me to share my?
Yep.
Very short presentation tonight, Mr. Wiggler. I think you'll be happy with me.
I like the long one.
You'll get it. You'll get it. So we're going to talk about our enrollment in our district first, because that is who we're building our budget for. Our resident enrollment is 1,909 students, and I'm going to go into more detail in the next. Our school enrollment is 2168, and our district enrollment is 2191. You'll just see the difference. Residents, you live in our town and go to our schools. School enrollment, you're actually sitting in one of our seats. District enrollment is the school enrollment, plus all of our students that are in out-of-district placements. Resident enrollment, I have a 3-year comparison here, and then I'm just judging it against 21 years ago when I started keeping data. Can you hear me okay? You can hear me okay? So you'll see in the prior year column, we are down 27 students yet again. In FY22, the first column used for fiscal year FY23's budget, we actually saw an increase in students, but we are continuing to see declining enrollment of resident and students. resident students. And what does that mean? That means,
John.
What does that mean? That means that we will see no new Chapter 78 because our enrollment has gone down. What we may see, and we won't know until we get the numbers from DESE, our hold harmless debt may be reduced by the Student Opportunity Act additional funds towards for EL students and low-income students. However, we don't actually get the cash. It goes to pay off our debt first. So we're not going to see that. It's very disappointing because I mentioned at our last meeting, when we first came out of COVID and we were getting all this extra money, Sheila and I made a plan. We hoped that by FY26, we'd be coming out of hold harmless debt because we saw that number and said $2 million down, and it hasn't happened. And unfortunately, we're not going to be there yet as soon as we had thought. So that's very disappointing. School enrollment is only down by 4 students. So what does that mean? That means we have more school choice kids than we had last year, which is a good sign for us. So we are down 4 kids, but over the last 3 years, we're down 55. Look at that number from 21 years ago, which I believe was FY03. 1,062 students down school-wide, 1,065 students down from residents. Not turning around. So this is the new slide. You know, when you're the presenter, you get all these extra things on your screen. It's really annoying. This is a new report that I haven't used in the past, but when I was building this over the weekend, what I wanted to point out, because I know we always hear, you have less students, why isn't your budget down? Well, this is one of the reasons so I wanted to show the numbers. This first top part of the graph is English learners. And although we had a spike in the October 2021 school year, which was just coming out of COVID and we were in hybrid sessions, we did have 10 English learners. And these are, as Colleen and I, when we were talking about it today, these are not the actual number of students in our district right now that are getting EL services, because this report is just our resident students. So although it says we have 6, Colleen was sure we have 13 getting services right now because some of them are school choice. What is important to look at are the numbers in bold, and if you can't see those, our special education students receiving special ed services, ages 6 through 21, has increased. You can see we took a little dip during the hybrid year that we were here and went down a little bit more, but then we went back up. So it's 356 to 350 to 340, but then jumped back up with vengeance at 399, 429 students last year, and 478 students this year. We have more students that need special education services. And on top of that, our high needs students, which John, I wish I had seen you earlier today. I searched DESE's website for the definition of what a Title I student is, and I couldn't find it anywhere. But in this line here, you'll see we had 79 students in October 2018, then 61, then 534. That's the year that they changed the definition of low-income students across the state. However, we're still using that same definition throughout the years of the Student Opportunity Act, and we went from 534 to 577 to 1,089 to 1,097. So what I wanted to point out to the public is we may have less students in total, both residents and students sitting in our seats. However, the students we have are needier than we've had in the past. And when they need services, to provide those services, we need people with those skills. It's not like I'm going to jump in and teach someone how to speak English, or I'm going to jump in and help. I'm sorry, John, I'm not doing your department. It's hard to find those people. He mentioned it in his report. All the positions we still have open this year to try to find students, staff to teach special education students.
Ask a question?
Yeah.
John, thank you for coming. Just a quick question. It seems like an incredible increase in special education students. Yeah, I guess somebody is going to be asking, I mean, if they look at this, what you would attribute that to. And I mean, we can blow it off on the pandemic, but I'm not so sure that that's really all we're talking about. What would you say would be the reasons?
Actually, I think part of the pandemic was that a lot of kids actually falling behind, and a lot more referrals coming out of the pandemic. Folks were starting to realize that their kids were not performing at grade level. So it's not unusual in this region to see a lot of the districts actually that had been probably around 17 to 19% total enrollment committed to special ed actually start to creep up closer to 25%. So there are some districts in this region that are actually at 25%. I don't think we're that far off from that. I think we're somewhere between 22, 23% at this time.
Can I chime in too? So when
Sure.
we talk about student needs, remember that students with disabilities are not just for academic needs, but as we've talked about previously, we've had increases to social, emotional, and mental health needs. Those students may also qualify for special services.
And I do think that's also, before I came on board here, your autism programs have been really functioning at high numbers. And I know that you've even expanded before I came. So we've seen over the last really 25 years, we used to see the autism ratio being much broader than it is now. And nowadays, I think when I got into education, I think the ratio was something like 1 out of so many students. Nowadays, I think it's like 1 out of every 150 students or so.
Which could be tied to,
Some of your increases in enrollment.
yeah, increases in enrollment and, people talk about, the impact, the increase in autistic students based upon, diet, chemicals, all the stuff that's, happening in our society, the changes in our society. And I would think that might also play into it. At least that's what, I've been reading a little bit about lately. Thank you.
Now, students that are in special needs, say they're in 6, they don't necessarily stay as a special needs student till they graduate, right? I mean, they can go in or out of the program.
Yeah, so it's really one of our goals to put ourselves out of business. I mean, we want to get students back to a place where they can fully integrate in the general ed setting without our support. So we're, in some ways, really for a lot of our kids, we're trying to give them the strategies to actually address the curriculum in the general ed setting so that they can do it independently. But yes, it should not be a life sentence that somebody's on an IEP. And the expectation is always to get them back into general ed and back off from services when they're no longer needed.
Both of my students were on an IEP in kindergarten because Steve and I talked too fast and they couldn't enunciate their words. So they both had it for speech. Jared started actually when he was 3, so he started 3, but Dalton didn't start until kindergarten. But then they were off at grade 1. So.
Cheryl, I was noticing the numbers out of special education 3 to 5.
That's what I was
have gone
going to
down.
say. That's what I was going to
So-
say. Maybe that's encouraging.
And I thought that was encouraging as well, yes. Or they're being,
Or
or they're
are the
being
people not
homeschooled,
coming?
right, son?
I mean, that's the preschool, right?
That's our preschool, and our numbers are robust in preschool, so,
Okay, so here are some,
Good chart.
yeah.
That was
Yeah,
helpful.
that is something that would be helpful when we're talking to the towns, talking to people in the community.
every once in a while I have a good idea, huh?
No, you always say.
So here are some of our budget challenges as we sat down and tried to put one together. Our SS refunding that we've talked about for a long time. Regaining ground on Lawn English slower than expected. Supporting students' social, emotional, and overall wellness. Understanding and correcting chronic absenteeism. We talked about that at the last school committee meeting. Increased caseloads for special education and counseling. John has talked about that in his reports. Inflation, exclamation point. Everything is going up. I went to get my big drink from Cumberland Farms. It was 97 cents. It's now $1.35. That's more than a 35% increase. My salary did not go up by 35%. How am I going to buy my Dr. Pepper? But it's crazy.
Maybe hold off on your retirement.
Good idea.
already hit that from every one of them.
I put an awful lot of money away every paycheck, so I don't have to do that. But people have to understand that everything that we buy is more expensive than it has been in the past. I'm sure that when we see our bus bid in a week and a half, we're going to see a huge hit. Our oil bid is out. I'm getting so many companies that are asking for the bid on oil this year. I don't know why, it scares the heck out of me, but it's going to hit us hard.
Is
Unable.
this a contract year, I'm sorry, for busing and for example, or no?
No, unfortunately, no. Just the yellow buses. Unable to fill positions timely. Colleen has talked about that across our district. John has talked about it in meetings, positions still available. And we have more retirements to fill next year than we have had in the last 3 years. So it's going to be hard to find people, I think. So this is just putting some numbers together to what we talked about in our last meeting and how we are going to continue with programming that was put in place with ESSER 3 funds, now that that is ending. And we have done a lot of talking about these programs. In the realm of social, emotional, mental health supports, we added a BCBA 2 years ago. And these are the amounts of the salaries for this coming year and what we're going to do. We added 2 behavioral support specialists. We have more than that, don't we? Don't we have more than just 2? We added a social worker when Jane Cremens retired. She usually spent most of her time with the middle high school, but then she had to branch out to the elementary schools, and she said it was a job that could not be done. She retired, and we added an elementary social worker. That was difficult to find. In the realm of teaching and learning, we added preschool teachers, so we have a preschool in each one of our elementary schools. We needed a SOAR para, didn't have the money in the budget. We added a reading teacher to help the middle school that were not on grade level reading. We added an intervention specialist. It was actually a reclass from an academic coach to fill a need as an intervention specialist instead. So that was in a new position. That was a transfer. And some intervention tutors to help in that reading program or with that reading teacher at the middle school. And then we added the technology integration specialist coming out of COVID. We thought that we needed people to help our teachers get kids fully engaged while using technology in the classroom. And so we've done that for the last 2 years using extra grants. So you see that there's a 0 there. That is a program that we are ending. We're not bringing that forward. But the other programs, as Colleen mentioned at one of our meetings, we need at least another year. We're not where we are, that learning loss that we didn't gain as much ground as we had hoped. So we need at least another year to review these programs and see what we're going to do. So those are the ones that are staying at this point in this budget proposal. Here's our list. I know you can't see it, but there are 10 retirements for next year and not many teachers. But you'll see, if you can see that. I'm sorry you don't have it on your screens. We have the Director of Teaching and Learning, Joe Wyman, resigned in July or August of this year. We kept that position open. Colleen thought we're not going to find anybody during the school year. Let's see what we can do, but we do have that still in the budget. The middle high school SOAR teacher, we had found someone after that position being open for a long time, found somebody. She didn't stay very long. That is still open, right, John?
It is.
Still open. We have a couple paraprofessional positions, both 182-day and 212-day that are unfilled. So they're unfilled now, so they're in next year's budget. We hope to fill them sometime this year. Our chief project engineer, Peter Coppolino, is retiring in June. It's going to be very difficult to replace him. You heard about me. The guidance counselor at the high school, Donna Hubbard, who has been here longer than I have been here, is retiring at the end of the year. A kindergarten teacher, 2 paraprofessionals, Kim Stady, the school nurse at the middle high school, and 2 secretaries, Nita Bates, who does the student activity and the accounting really at the middle high school, and then the school secretary at Hubbardson Center School, Janice Roddy, and the middle school science teacher. So out of all that, usually you see all teachers. So we have a kindergarten teacher and a middle school science teacher. Everything else are other staff that are in other departments. We do have some requests for new positions in Hubbardston. They did ask, just so you know, you'll see it later on another screen, but they asked to add a teacher for class size. When Colleen met with her, it's really a need of more special ed needs in the classroom. They need special education services. And I said right away when Colleen mentioned that, they have less special ed teachers in Hubbardston than anywhere else in the district. So she talked her into changing that to an intervention tutor. John talked about at his last report, the need, we brought OT and PT staff on board. Before when he had New England Center for Children overseeing our autistic program, they provided those services. But now that we are doing our own in-house autism program, we needed to get those services. Those were very difficult to fill. We went without most of last year and most of this year, the beginning of this year, and the caseload is too large. So he talked to you about adding a position for OT and a PT. And they're very expensive. They're very expensive placement positions. And we have a request for additional paraprofessional support in the Project Create classroom, special education program over in Oakham, and also in the TLC special education program in Hardwick. So there's a lot of positions that will be open. Either they're unfilled right now, 10 retirements, and 5 new positions requested for a total of $1.1 million, 20 FTE. That's a lot. It hasn't been like that for a long, long time. We have some unknown costs at this time, but we have budgeted the best that we can. The charter school assessment still has not been released from DESE. Worcester Regional Retirement, you hear our auditors say it all the time, they're so far behind in the actuarial report. We haven't seen that assessment yet. Retired teachers' health insurance, GIC is most likely waiting for the governor's budget to see how much that's being supported. And we have some major contract renewals. We talked about the regular transportation at our last meeting. We probably need to add a bus. The problem is, just like when we have a teacher class size problem, we don't need one bus in a particular town. We have buses oversubscribed in Hubbardston, Barry, and Oakham. So, and this is only at the middle high school level. So Kerry, our transportation coordinator, is going to work and see if we can get somehow a bus to go through multiple towns, maybe even reroute a school choice bus coming out of Templeton, Athol, Petersham to go through Hubbardston or Barry. So we're going to try a few things, but we did ask in our bid to bid one bus separately. If we don't need it, we're going to take it right out.
Just a question. I get this all the time, right? And I even think about it too sometimes. I see a lot of buses riding around with not too many kids in them, yet we need additional buses. I realize that we have to provide busing for students. Is there, I mean, that is an issue. I mean, is it not? I mean, people are looking at this and.
Well, it all depends on where you are when you're seeing the bus. And let me tell you, in the old days when the bus seats were low, you could easily see how many kids are on the bus. You cannot tell if kids are on the bus with these high seats. And it depends on where you are with the route, too, as to how many kids are on the bus. But in our bid, go online, our bid's online, we actually have the routes. You'll see how many kids are on each bus.
Who are assigned to each bus, yet I see parents, like, you know, I guess, you know, living in Hubbardston, it's pretty obvious when, you know, the main street was like, you know, you saw like, say, probably 100 cars or 75 cars on a morning dropping kids off. So these kids are obviously not using the buses. So it's just an issue that really comes up a lot. I get asked that a lot. It's like, nobody was there. I saw a bus the other day, you know, it was right near the school dropping people off. There are only like 10 kids on it. I mean, and you need more buses. So I guess it's just something that we need to be prepared to explain.
Well, I think that we can ask Kerry to get the rosters out to the drivers. Tell me if this can be done, Peggy. And the drivers can take attendance for a couple of days on the bus. So they've got their roster. They always have their roster. You have your route sheet. You can check off for a week in a row and see how many kids actually ride the bus. And then we have the data.
Doesn't solve the problem.
Yeah, but then what do you do?
Well,
It doesn't.
Like
well,
today, I
it
had
doesn't.
kids that I haven't seen since September.
Mhm.
I was like, oh, you're on today, you know, so you have to provide them a seat. because that's all we do.
No,
You know?
I totally understand this.
Right.
But
That won't
I'm trying to figure out an answer
Well, you
that
can't,
I can tell somebody when I get, the next time I get asked.
you can't have the answer unless we get the data. So why don't we collect the data?
Okay, that's good.
But we have to have John McCarthy on our side and ask his drivers to do this for us so we can collect the data. But Peggy's right. You may not have certain kids on when it's a certain sports season, but that's going to change when the next sports season changes. And then if there's an early release and the parents can't come, you have to have a seat on the bus for every kid that's getting on the bus. But right now, we actually have ridership where there's too many kids on the bus. There's like too many kids on the Hubbardston bus.
Right, ridership.
Actually riding, there's too many kids on the bus. You're only supposed to have, in middle high school, correct me if I'm wrong, two kids to a seat when you're in middle high school, and we have 3 people to the seat, and you're not supposed to.
Are they
You get pulled over.
signed or actually riding? I guess that's where we would figure it out with the attendance.
Right. No, we have 2 or 3 buses in our district that have too many kids on the bus.
Really, they show up at school with too many kids on the bus.
I can see more of an issue at the elementary level and the bus is fuller at the middle high school, obviously with the distances and everything. And I know, are they the same routes for both? Like when you're doing just in the town, is it a similar route? Like are the buses as full for the elementaries?
no, they're
as
not.
the middle?
No, they're not.
That's what I'm,
No.
so I didn't know if there's a way to.
Parent drop off and pick up.
Well, that's, I mean, so many, Hubbardston is
I think
notorious
we
for that.
did see
The kids don't like to
increase.
ride the bus, so.
So we saw increased parent drop-off from COVID. I think that's decreasing. I mean, we rode the buses at the start of the year at Hubbardston. I can speak to Hubbardston. We had, 1 week, 5 of us riding the 5 buses. I would
I make
not.
friends.
Yeah, and I would not say, I don't know how you felt, but the bus I was on was not, I would not call that undersubscribed, at least the one I was on.
My bus wasn't, it was elementary, so it was not oversubscribed.
Right.
There were seats available.
Yeah,
for one
but
kid.
not like,
But it all depends.
Right.
When I had never been down some of these roads in Hubbardston, and I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah.
this is far out there. You know,
Yeah.
the distance, you also can't be on the bus for over an hour.
Right.
So the route has to go so that they're not on.
Urban routes are definitely well over an hour. I used to take my kids to get home.
There are,
Yeah.
there
I
are.
was gonna say, like, I'm the only bus in New Braintree, and I go to every corner. I don't have a full bus, I'll honestly say, I don't have a full bus, but boy, I start at 5:30.
And you've gone to every corner of the town.
Right. So it's more mileage where I'm concerned as opposed to numbers.
Well, what would the remedy be? I mean, really, so if you have a bus route and there's like 18 kids you're gonna pick up and 15, parents of 15 decide we're gonna drive them to school 4 out of 5 days a week, you can't DC that bus because there's still 3 kids, number one, but number two, if the parent's car, one part breaks down or this or that, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I can understand when people ask that question, but ask them what's their remedy? What are they gonna, by regulation, we cannot just say, hey, we only get 3 kids on this route, fine, we're not gonna throw a bus down there. I mean, it doesn't work.
Yeah, their remedy would be, the parents should tell us when they're going to drive their kid in all week and then, well, it doesn't, there is no easy remedy.
No,
I totally know
That's
that.
that's what I'm
But
saying. And even if you got parents to state and say something that, yeah, we're gonna drive, but what if they, the car breaks down, there's a parent's divorce, whatever happens, suddenly there's kids that need a ride who maybe didn't in September, but now we're in January and fine, they don't have a ride anymore. I mean,
Yeah. The easy answer is does the state mandate that you have to provide transportation? Okay, so that's the easy answer, really. That the state really has to.
Regional school districts are mandated to provide transportation under Chapter 71.
Whether
And-
parents decide to drive on 2 days a week
Well,
or
if you,
no days a week.
if you
right?
listen to Jay Sullivan, who's the guru at DSE, he will tell you that every kid is assigned a seat, whether or not they take a bus. I don't necessarily agree with that, and I used to say to Stacy, get the number of drivers and see where you are. But she said, yeah, but then we have to get an early release or something, and there's no seat. And I said, I get it, but that's few and far between. But it's very difficult, and you're not supposed to be on a bus more than an hour either. And you have to be at a bus stop that's less than a mile and a half from your home. So we do have community bus stops. So we do have bus stop. Wachusett stops at every single house.
Oh, yes.
They now go up Nancy Drive and Anthony Drive, where you used to walk down to the end and get picked up. They go up and through the developments and stop at every house. We have community bus stops and kids that go, live on one cul-de-sac, they walk to one house or whatever. So I think we've managed our buses well over the
The
years.
state's going to reimburse us 100% anyway, so it's not going to be an issue, right?
Yeah, it's not going to be.
The thing is, we have chronic absenteeism. If we're not providing at least transportation for them to get here, if, a parent says, I'm going to drive my kid and the car breaks down and then they don't go to school, so.
So that's where we are.
Sorry I launched into that.
We also restructured the IFB this year. In the past, we have always asked the vendors bidding to keep the first 3 years bus cost constant. And then if we allowed a second or actually fourth or fifth year, it was a 2.5% increase the last two contracts. This year, we redesigned it so that they can have an increase each year. I'm hoping to mitigate that first year increase by doing that. So we'll see how that works out for us.
Length of contract,
Excuse me?
the length of contract. You have-
3 + 2?
No, I don't be thinking 5. You're still thinking 3 and 2.
Rollover for 2.
Yeah, it's not 5, it's 3 + 2. It's-
Okay, 3 + 2.
Yes, 3 + 2. Yeah, it has to come to school committee because it's over 3, so that'll be on the February meeting. The heating oil I talked about, that is due on the 31st of January. Our general business insurances are unknown at this time because FY '24's renewal is in March. So I will base the FY '25 renewal on the new numbers we get. Unemployment, it's unknown right now how many people will be unemployed or still are unemployed, but we're self-insured. So I have budgeted the amount that we usually do budget. Our workers' compensation insurance, our audit was going on just a little while ago, so we don't have next year's premium as of yet. And our electricity is due in November of 2024. So as we start the new year, we'll be going out to bid for our electricity. So there's a lot of big ticket items that are unknown at this time. Using rural school aid to support FY '25, we talked about this when we had our meeting a couple weeks ago. Our plan is to use this year's rural school aid to offset some costs currently being charged to school choice. What that will do is allow us to have $400,000 in school choice reserve to kind of offset those positions and programs that are in ESSER 3 currently. So I put together a little chart of what we hope to do. We would have $642,000 available for some things that were in our first round of the budget that are one-time things or one-time right now things, so that we can not get so far behind, especially in our building repairs and our floor replacement plans that have been on hold for the last 2 or 3 years in our budget. So the building repairs is $40,000. The floor replacement projects, $192,000. Classroom desks, chairs, tables, rugs, and calf tables. Sorry, that got cut off. We talked to you about, we haven't bought furniture in our district probably since I've been here, except for the middle high school. We bought desks and chairs at the middle high school. They were adjustable desks and chairs. But Coppolino says you can only weld something so many times. So we do have some classroom desks, furniture, tables, rugs, and cafeteria tables in there. Equipment in vehicles, that's the UTV, which we have 2 quotes on, one at $41,000, one at $46,000. We're not getting the same vehicle you have, Peggy, obviously.
We must have lots of extras.
And let's see, there was that and a couple other of the equipment that we needed. We still have the engineering study in there to enclose the rails around around all of the high school where there's railing. Say we cut that, but I say we haven't been written up about it. I think who's online? I can't see who was online when I present. I think that's something we could let go. And we talked about the bucket truck, how we need about $7,000 worth of repairs to even get it inspected and allowed to be on the road, and the bucket to be used. So we either park it in the parking lot or we try to get something that we can actually use. So that's some of the things that we are hoping to get done this year with rural school aid. Hopefully, we'll still get it in the future years at the level that we got this year. We'll see what happens when that first round of budget comes out
So there's still 210 left over, right?
right now. Well, and we, these are all, we have quotes on one piece, but they're just all estimates of what things will be.
Yeah, Leah talked about an engineering study for,
The press box, yeah, I know.
yeah.
Yeah, we're hoping to get that done. So after I got this, I said I'd start working on that. So that's where we are right now. I can't see my number. When we put the first budget proposal together, we were just over $41 million. But we told you that we would bring some reductions to that forward at this first meeting. So these are some of the things that we have done. Colleen, jump in at any time.
Sure.
Our academic coaches, which include our intervention specialists, work an extended year. Some of them work 5 extra days, 7 extra days, 10 extra days. They're all being cut back to 5 days. That will only save us $8,700 because 3 of them are in the Title I grant and 1 is in the Student Opportunity Act Grant 117, but across the board, Colleen's going to be reducing their work year. We are cutting teaching position at the high school, IP teaching, half-time teacher, half-time community engagement person to be filling retirement in the middle school. Right now we have 2 positions for certified nursing assistants. 1 has been unfilled most of this year with a leave of absence. We put these positions in when COVID hit and we needed to have those rooms that were outside of the nurse's office and someone to do that. But we believe that we can do with 1 less next year. So we will cut 1 of those CNA positions, transfer the other one. Our health grant has been renewed and the position fits well into that grant. So we will move 1 to the grant. The next item was just something that was double budgeted. The principal budgeted it and so did Kevin. So I'm taking that out. There was a requested teacher. I told you about that. We're going to replace it with an intervention tutor. That's the difference in salary budgeted. So that extra line, it's actually, I could take that out. That didn't happen. This list of maintenance, repairs, and assets is just what I went over, the $316,000. Buildings and grounds equipment. These are 2 things that Kevin had in the budget, which were just numbers that before he got actual quotes. So I took them out and I just added them to our list of things we'd use with rural school aid money. So from the first round of budget, with everybody's input to where we are tonight, we reduced $666,971 with a budget that is 6.17% over the current year. When I first saw the 7.9% increase, I went, wow, that's not bad. I mean, considering where we ended our contracts last year, with all of our CBAs getting most of our CBAs anyway, getting a 6% increase, that's not too bad.
And what was the final number on the union contract?
333.
333.
But 333 and then 3% steps, so it's 666.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why.
No, I get it.
So high. So I think that surprised me that we came in right there. There were some other things that I did. I don't know if you wanted to talk about them, but one thing that I'm concerned about, can I bring that up? The school choice thing, bring that up? So when I was working on this, I was a little concerned about the level of school choice that we're going to be using. I don't think I put this in. Yeah, I did. So because we're putting some more positions into school choice, even though it's really being offset with rural school aid, the last couple of years, we've used more school choice than we usually do to keep programs that we have. Our beginning cash balance in school choice is $4.6 million. Our expenses for this year are 2.6. So we have $2 million in reserve. Looking back those expenses to rural school aid, the 400,000, we're starting with 2.4 million. The expected revenue for this year, so far to date, we received $752,000 because DESE reimburses us monthly now, but that was before the October 1 numbers. So once October 1 came through and the official counts are there, then they reassess what is due to us. And we expect to get $1.9 million in this year, which is substantially more than we've gotten in the past couple of years. So we will have, with reserves in next year's revenue, this year's revenue, $4.3 million. But with this proposed version 2, we're going to spend 3.5 million of it next year, which leaves us with 850,000 in school choice reserve, which is the lowest we've had in a while. However, this is not touching the 1.5 million we have in E&D. So before we used to have substantially high, for us, school choice reserves and low E&D. Now it'll be lower school choice, which is recurring revenue, and higher E&D. So
We still have a small balance from the rural.
well, that has to be spent by June 30th.
Right.
So
that's right.
we don't know what to do with that. And we don't,
Makes it easier.
and those are all estimates of what things will cost as well.
Right.
If we estimate that FY '25's revenue comes in around the same, so we have the same number of school choice, the same number of additional sped increments or whatever, we would have a lack of revenue in school choice for FY '26. But again, like I say, $1.5 million in E&D that if we don't touch it this year. And you can offset those two funds. If you wanted to use $500,000 in E&D to fund FY '25, then we have 1.3 left in school choices, which we normally have 1.3, 1.5 in there. But that's what Sheila and I plan to do since 3 years ago. We've been trying to put money in these spots so that we could not have to dump all programs we put into place because Esther was leaving. So I was a little nervous. I wanted to do all this math and make sure that we were not going to be too bad. And I'm not very good at admitting people into the meeting, so I'm sorry about that. So I think that's okay. One thing that I didn't mention on here, last year, for this year, the school committee voted to use money that we had in technology stabilization to buy Chromebooks and laptops for staff and students. And that came to me late Sunday, and I'm like, oh, wow, let me take a look at that. So there right now is $140,000 in stabilization. The cost of the refresh at the middle high school for next school year is $147,000. So I texted Mr. Walsh, and thank God he got back to me, because if you remember, we purchased the items from stabilization, but you may or may not get E-rate reimbursement on that. We got E-rate reimbursement. We got $44,000 coming, the checks in the mail, which gives us enough to cover this. And then again, you'll get E-rate reimbursement. It's almost like a recurring revenue. You get E-rate reimbursement, go back into stabilization. So if we can get the school committee as a total to vote to use stabilization next year for this purchase, and then we will replenish it when it comes in with the E-rate reimbursement, I think that's a good way to do that and get us to where we are at 6.1%. 6.2%.
Which we ended the year, what, 5.9 over the previous year, right? Wasn't it 5.9 or 6.1?
Last year?
Yeah.
I don't know. Let me
I
look
think
it
it was
up.
like 5.9 or something.
I don't know.
If you look at 6.17, what does that mean to the towns, do you know? I know.
Have not taught you anything.
Nice try, Peggy.
Have I not taught you anything?
That's all they want to see too.
I know.
We don't even have the governor's budget.
Oh, I know.
I don't do hypotheticals.
I know you don't.
Any true accountant would not do hypotheticals.
Sure.
But when the numbers come out, I will have the revenue side for you, hopefully, if they come out and they're ready for the meeting on the 1st. That was our plan, that they would be out and we could do that. They're going to be high, and they're going to be exorbitantly high in Hubbardston. And I told you why. They're going to be very high in Hubbardston. If Hubbardston sees a large increase in required local contribution, their assessment's going to be through the roof.
Well, they added 20 students, right? So,
Well, Looking at the charts of, yeah, when you were showing the enrollment.
Well, I talked-
When a lot of towns had gone down and
I think
Hubbardston
the
had
rest
some
of them
pretty
went down.
substantial increase.
All of them did. When we met with the town officials last week, we went over this because, and I say this every time we talk about the resident enrollment, what it's going to mean later on. So if they see an increase in required local contribution, if they were on a reval year, were you on a reval year?
I don't even know anymore. They are maximizing
Actually, I think
the
we got-
valuations.
Yeah, I think we got reevaluated last year.
I think it was
It
last.
was last year, because
I think it
it
was
went up a
last
few $100, right?
I went up $1,000. My taxes went up $1,000. But it's going to be a large assessment increase because everybody else's enrollment went down and they're going to pay a bigger portion of the pie. 1% more.
Look at 20.
You guys notice more building going on, house building there, or?
No, but
Any
like
area?
on the Facebook Hubbardston page, there's, just moved to town, moving to town. And I think some of it may contribute, they changed the bylaw that anyone could reside in an in-law apartment. And there's a house near me that had an elderly couple living in it and now has 5 children living in that in-law apartment. And there's 3 children in the main house. So, are you getting different tax revenue? No, you're not. It's still taxed the same.
That's not
But
new growth.
you've changed the dynamic from, a senior population to anyone now. So, I think there's a lot of reasons, but I think I do notice like a lot of new people to town. But I think they kind of come and go a little bit too. I'm not sure
But
about that.
what I think you're seeing is, what's part of a national trend is people my age are, maybe not yet, but we're going to sell I'm not, but people will be selling their houses and hopefully they're probably going to be selling them to people who are significantly younger, sort of millennials who haven't bought a house yet, who may be entertaining the idea of having kids. But when they sell, probably the value, the assessment will go up, but you're still going to, probably have some additional folks coming into the community, additional students coming into the community. And I think that's what we see. On my own street, I've seen, a lot of people, say in the 60 to 80 age group who've sold their house, moved to Florida, and the people who are moving in do have children.
I think you're right, because when we did like the Collins Report study, it had shown that people were aging in place and those starter homes were not available. And I think with the market boom and seeing all the money, the profit that can be made now, it is more appealing to elderly, and with taxes going up, I think they're taking advantage of the market.
And the younger people are
And they-
moving further away.
Just to
from
my
the city because they
neighborhood,
can
it
afford
was
it.
2 houses, very similar, and they were priced $100,000 apart. And the one that was priced cheaper sold within like hours with cash offers, way over expected. And the other one did sit longer, but it's still like amazing the amount of money they're getting for homes now. So I think you're right.
You got to get some lower interest rates too, as part
I know.
of the mix in the process.
But I don't
mean,
really
that's-
see a lot of new construction in town.
So I have a 7-mile ride from my house down into Colebrook area, not Colebrook, Hardwick. Why do I always, Gilbertville, thank you, Gilbertville. And there are 5 houses in different stages of being built, and they started like last fall. Usually you don't go through the winter, but I guess because it's so mild, they were pouring a foundation in late December, and I thought, holy crap, when we built, they said, oh, you don't want to, anyway. So 2 in Barry and 3 in Hardwick, and I'm thinking, all I've got is like a 6.5, 7-mile stretch, and I see 5 houses. I'm just wondering if I just have that stretch where it happens to be going on, or if there's just a lot more going on in the region.
like Deb said, I don't see a lot of new houses. I see a lot of houses being turned over, being worked on after they're bought. I mean, things that are flipped, like
Yeah.
an old house, they flip it, they get it cheap and then
Yeah.
they rehab
That's
it.
what I
You know,
mean.
a
I've seen
family
them
moves
turn
in.
over quicker.
We had one across the street from the school here. Yeah, the school in Hubbardston, right across the street, and several on Main Street, same deal in Hubbardston. Other people buy it rather cheap and, they fix it up and they move in with, and they do have, in many cases, children, so that's probably part of I'm sure that's part of the 20. All right,
Carol,
sorry.
can I ask you something that kind of unrelated to this, but I guess it could be down the road? So, or Colleen, what's our agreement if we have one with our Voc Tech school? Is it just like we send kids and then we just get billed for it, or
We don't have,
we don't have any
we don't
agreement?
have any
Okay.
agreement. They're totally separate things.
Okay, all right. So I was reading about that whole situation up on the North Shore. Where there are 9 towns and 2 cities essentially. And they're voting to rebuild for 400 million. I guess the state's going to plow in a couple hundred million, but the towns have to vote for like 240 million. And where the tech school is the city. And so the thought is, okay, well, all the people in that city are going to vote for it because that's the highest percentage of kids in there. But all the towns who don't have as many kids there, they're all going to be on the hook. That's their agreement. So for 11 school entities, their agreement is to fund this school, however that was set up. And they can't change it. I mean, one town said, this could cost us millions of dollars. And we send like maybe 4 kids to that Voc Tech, but they can't get out of the agreement. And I started reading that. I said, wow, that's really not weird, but it's not the best setup, especially for the small towns. So I was just wondering, I know we obviously send kids to our Voc Techs, but I was wondering if we had some sort of tie-in with that.
We don't send our kids, the towns send the kids.
Okay,
So they most likely have the same type of regional agreement that our district has. I don't know how that works.
yeah, I was just curious because that's,
I would imagine if you had to build a new Monty Tech, the town of Barry would be paying a portion of that. You're paying for
And
their cars.
it's funny, like you just made a comment, is that going to town meetings these years, you look at the budget, and the vocational budget comes up, there's never a question,
I know there isn't.
not a word, or an analysis
blink.
about it, or anything like that. And we become, or I know we're the bigger enchilada when they see it, and, we become the highlight. And it's just too bad, the way that
It's not equitable.
townsfolk don't question and understand the full depth and breadth. And even though it's only 3 kids, 1 kid, whatever their assessment is, it's just right through. It just amazes me that over the years, it's never been discussions on that. And I've never gone to their Bay Paths meeting, or, I mean, not a Bay Path, but on Monty Tech. I've never gone to and listened to what their budget proposals.
You should. And you should ask them, why are the taxpayers paying for their vehicles that they drive? Because the taxpayers in those towns are paying for the superintendent and the business manager to drive a state vehicle. And in Pathfinder, I know the superintendent has a district vehicle, but I don't know about the business manager. But we walked out of Hubbardston's town meeting, and the superintendent and the business manager both had state plates on their car. So you're paying for their car. We don't have cars. Yeah, you haven't paid for my car.
Isn't there also, though, Mark, some discussion now around the super selectivity
Yes.
of Voc Tech schools and how that's impacting students, both students who really need to get into, I mean, you have students who go to the Voc Tech school and like 70% of them go to college, which is great. But the bottom line is, a lot of folks thought that a long time ago that, we were going to get our plumbers, our electricians and everybody out of there. And now we have a dearth of those folks because, the schools are being super selective and folks are opting to go to college. So, yeah, I mean, there is some discussion about that. Even in the legislature, I think they were talking.
There is.
There's something.
And a lot, and discussion too of programs, getting more programs into comprehensive
high school. Again.
Next steps.
So as we know, the governor's budget is set to be announced on Thursday. Then DESE will release the district numbers. Then we could look at Chapter 78 circuit breaker reimbursement and the SOA effect in our hold harmless debt. As the unknown costs that we talked about are known, we will adjust those in next versions of the budget. And we're keeping a close eye on new enrollments. Since COVID, it's a revolving door with staff. It's a revolving door with kids. We need to keep a close eye on what our enrollments are and see how it impacts certain class sizes in certain areas. Look at making other adjustments along the way until we see what 6.1% does to our town assessments. The whole fast.
Isn't our enrollment though based on October 1? Even if we get more kids?
Oh, that doesn't matter now. Yes,
Right.
yeah, you don't get the.
So I got another question. As far as SOA, if it has an effect, can we say we got SOA money if it lowers our hold harmless debt, or is that not really, we don't really get any money from that, right? So all the districts that are in hold harmless theoretically, or in reality, get no SOA money.
We may get minimum aid, which
People don't know that.
we may get minimum aid, which is, could be anywhere
Right.
between $25 and $50 per student, but that's all we get.
You know, as far as hold harmless goes, is that based on our declining enrollment year over year, or is it's not based on 21 years ago? It's just based on last year. Is that right?
Well, no, your debt. So what they do to calculate, they calculate it every year. So the SOA, the impact of SOA on districts goes into your foundation enrollment calculation, foundation budget calculation. And so the number's updated every year, but it's because we went from 3,000 students to 1,909. We had 3,000 students in our district in FY05.
Right.
So it's over time. So they take, because it does go back to the beginning of whatever, because they take what last year's aid was, and you can't get less aid. So if you lost 10,000 kids in 1 year, that'd be one thing, right? But if you lose a little bit over time and you're still carrying that debt with you, because they start with last year's Chapter 78, they can't reduce it. So it's always been raised it could be zero, but sometimes it's raised by $20 to $50 per kid. So that adds to your debt because you don't have the kids that make up that money. So it continues over time. I have to tell you, and Maureen will tell you the same thing, we never knew that was happening. And all of a sudden, one day, they said, hold harmless debt. We're like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about?
I know a few years ago,
Yeah.
it seemed like they started talking about it.
Yeah. We never knew that. So until we get out of that, and I can calculate those numbers when the district gets their numbers and see how far we are. Still, we thought that we would be out in 2026 because we had that spike, a little spike in enrollment. And it just takes one extra kid to impact it, right? And so it's not going to happen, though. Not going to happen for FY26.
Hubbardston's trying.
It's trying, but it's
Doing their part.
Yeah, they're doing their part, but.
So does the increased number of economically disadvantaged kids, is that helping us as far as?
It helps to reduce that hold harmless debt because it's part of the formula. So you're getting extra money for them, but we're still $2 million in debt.
Yeah.
So now we're only $1.9 million in debt because
Yeah.
so it's all one big pool of money.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll see where we are when this one comes out.
Anything else?
That's it.
Anybody else have any questions? Any questions from any folks online? Zoom?
We can't see.
We don't need to vote on anything tonight, is that correct?
Nope.
Next meeting is February 1st at 6 o'clock. This particular presentation will be hosted
We'll post it online, yes.
online, probably. I think the situation is by the following Monday, it should be online. But on Monday, sometimes it's on even earlier, which is definitely a plus. February 1st, 6 o'clock, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Meeting adjourned.